Hello, everyone. It's Steve Barras here, back with another edition of Coffee Break, and we're delighted to be here with Mary Osako, who's, I've got to read this out properly, Mary. You are the Vice Chancellor for Strategic Communications at UCLA, so head of comms, essentially, but you've gone full circle because you were a UCLA grad, and now you're back as head of communications. So first of all, welcome to Coffee Break, but tell us a little bit about that journey and how you landed there, because you had a few stops on the way.
Steve, thank you, number one, for having me. It's a real pleasure. And yes, Vice Chancellor of Strategic Communications, it's an inaugural role, and it encompasses marketing and communications for the school. It is my alma mater. I'm what they call a first-generation college grad, meaning I'm of the first generation on both sides of my family to graduate from college, my sister being the first. And from there, upon graduating, I really saw UCLA as almost a portal for me in so many ways, where I grew up 6.7 miles from here. And that was really my whole universe. And UCLA was, in a really big way, a place that opened the possibilities for me. And so off to corporate America I went, from Amazon, Yahoo, Activision Blizzard. And when I received the call to come back, it was a resounding yes. What does UCLA need?
What did you study back in the day?
I studied psychology, and back then they didn't have minors at UCLA. And so my specialization was Asian American Studies, which to this day I take with me, especially now.
Yeah, for
Feels
sure.
relevant than ever.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure. But psychology, that's an interesting skill to have as a PR pro. So how do you think that's informed the way you do the job? A really useful skill, I would imagine.
It is. The scholarly study of that was wonderful at UCLA. And I always like to joke, half-heartedly joke, that the abnormal psych is very useful in public relations. But it really is, connecting on a deeper level, really what stirs emotions, what really leaves a lasting impression, and how do you get to the heart of that? So in that way, not your typical journalism or your English degree or communications, but I really loved it. And it had a multiple choice test, which was also really nice.
So we can see from your beautiful backdrop there that you're working from home. Tell us how it's been the last few months for the school, for you working from home, but also for the students and the challenges that has represented from a communications point of view.
We just passed 1 year of communicating to our students and faculty and staff that it was time to pack up and go back to their dwellings. And in so many ways, I can't believe it. When you think about your undergrad education, it's 4 years. So 1 year is quite a long time, as you think about that universe. So UCLA, I think that the leadership team, of which I am part, has done a tremendous job in leading with a lot of heart. And it's been a lot of heart first. Our chancellor announced, early on in the pandemic, that he and UCLA would make a commitment to all of its employees not to have any COVID-related layoffs. And as you can imagine, Steve, housing and income and not just having a great job, but having a job was the kitchen table talk. And so from that perspective, I am a really proud UCLA leader, but, just as an alum as well. On the home front, I have twin boys who are 8, which makes them in 2nd grade. And as nicely as these books appear, when they get in here, this will all come to the ground. And so I think it's one of those things that a lot of parents, fellow parents, working parents, go through, just trying to get through it with some humor and, just empowering ourselves to give ourselves a little bit of a break. But being a working mom has been awkward, but rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. We've been following that in our Femme Forward blog series over the past couple of months, leading up to our Hall of Femme launch, reveal this year. And you're part of our Hall of Femme class of 2021. So congratulations on that, and
Thank you.
welcome to the Hall of Femme.
Thank you. It is such an honor. It really is. And yeah, I'm really thrilled about it. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. So tell us a bit about your corporate life. It was in the tech space, some really interesting companies there, you know, Activision, Amazon. How was that, and how was the tech space from a comms professional point of view, especially as an Asian American, especially as a woman in a space that is dominated still by men? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, my background and where I cut my teeth and spent the majority of my career is in public company tech companies, working with, having the pleasure to work with some really amazing founders and founder-led companies. Yahoo, I joined back when we didn't know if the internet was going to be a thing. Luckily it is.
Yeah, it's worked out okay, hasn't it? I remember those days, and there was there was some that didn't make it, Netscape and what were they, Alta Vista and Firefly. There was a lot of great brands actually, Yahoo certainly did survive. Although it's been through its ups and downs since then. But Amazon is certainly probably if not one of the biggest success stories that came out of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. And so much of that has to do with Jeff and his leadership. And I would say the leadership principles. Day one, when you start Amazon, my experience was that from day one, it's just being so clear about expectations and, wanting to make a little dent in that universe. And it isn't a surprise to me, even having, left, that the company is doing extraordinarily well and creating a ton of shareholder value.
What was it like working for Jeff Bezos then? Can you share an anecdote or two? Or?
My first meeting with him was really fantastic. I went in with a colleague of mine, and he gave that big, iconic Jeff laugh. And from that day, it sort of set me at ease. I worked really closely with him and others on the leadership team, my boss back then. And Jeff, what I really admire about him is he had a really clear vision, and he isn't afraid if the company is misunderstood. And from a communications perspective, it lets you think of the longer term strategy, makes you really think of the longer term strategy rather than what is the stock doing day to day. So in that way, it was really wonderful. When I was there, I used to always say when Amazon sneezes, the whole world picks up a Kleenex. And that is the spotlight that is on that company day in, day out. And so in that way, I know that team deals with a lot of precedent-setting issues, hard ones.
Yeah, it was interesting the way they pushed back on Twitter this past couple of weeks, wasn't it? Taking on sort of Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. I don't know if you, what do you think about that as a strategy? Is that, and that's coming from Jeff, isn't it? Jeff Bezos, you can almost see his fingerprints on that.
That I don't know. I think that it is an interesting strategy. I haven't been there in a few years. But what I might say is that ensuring that their story and their narrative out has always been, a big priority. So when I was there, we were going through the 2014 union vote. And so the communication strategy was a bit different than what I just as an outside observer see today. But I don't know what the inner workings or the thinking or who's driving it.
So moving towards these horrible attacks on Asian Americans that we've seen, and please Sorry about the Brooklyn noise in the background. Every time
Not
we
at all.
you got we got a soundtrack in the background, and a police car or a lorry always comes around. But talk to us about how that's impacting you as an Asian American, as about young people at UCLA, and what your views are on it generally, especially in terms of what you feel business should be doing to step up and combat it in an authentic and genuine way.
Yeah. It's hard for me to even talk about. And, there was a time, quite a bit of time, where I did a lot of reflection and thinking about the advocacy, thinking about the data, the 150% spike we saw of hate crimes against Asian Americans just in the last year, when the general hate crime, data was going downward. And, I really think, just speaking to you and other communications professionals that might be tuning in, words really do matter. And I think we're seeing that. From a brand perspective, my hope would be that this isn't just a moment, but it really is a movement. And as you say, not just doing lip service to say this is awful, we're horrified, but to really explore the lived experiences of all people who are in more marginalized communities. That takes time. It's not going to be a flip of a switch overnight. And things that usually take time take a lot of patience. And so my hope is that brands have that patience. They continue to invest in the listening, but also the doing of it, because we all need allies more than ever. It's a strange time in so many ways, but that's certainly being one of them.
Yeah, and young people are having a big say in the responses to this. What do you feel the young people at UCLA think about this? And I often think that young people are going to hold brands to account. They're going to hold business and brands to account, as well as the government. So what do you think UCLA's young people are going to do about this?
I would say to the young people within the UCLA community, but also just globally, is thank goodness for you and keep on going. The democratization of communications platforms make it so much easier in the sense of getting your voice out, and in creative ways and in persistent ways. So I don't know. I feel like I'm every day surprised in really wonderful ways. And I might just say, keep on going. And, I see hope on the horizon. I don't know if that's a Pollyanna-ish thing to say right now, but truly, I do. I see hope because of that younger generation out there.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we've got to be hopeful, and we've got to be positive and look to the future and be realistic as well. Looking to the future, how do you see this year? I mean, it's difficult to predict anything these days, but how do you see the year panning out, especially from the point of view of your communication around what's happening at UCLA, around when students will be able to come back, around the studies? Because you're right, it's a big part of young people's lives, and 1 year when you're that young is a massive percentage of your life, isn't it? And to miss out on almost on a whole year is so sad for those young people. But how are you going to communicate around the next couple of months around what's going to be going on at UCLA?
So at UCLA, I think 2021 and Q1 into 2022 will be a year for us focused on what I've been calling with my team kitchen table talk. And to me, it's health and housing and jobs and justice. When I say health, I don't mean just vaccines and physical wellness. It's mental wellness. People are just having the hardest time sleeping, and depression in the wall is really real. And so for us to focus on what I think are the 4 thematics for not only UCLA, but our society at large, I think that those will be the stories that we focus in on. And I can't tell you how happy I am. Our plans are to welcome students. UC's plan is to welcome students back this fall. And I hear LA might go into the orange tier as soon as this week. So again, just a lot of hope and a lot of communication. The one thing I will say is I was having a brainstorm with my team, and we started ideating already, return to campus, and maybe we have the Bruin band, and we have, Joe Bruin. And somebody on the team brought up this really wonderful point of don't forget the folks who will not feel like celebrating, where it shouldn't be all rah rah, and to really honor, the sadness and the reality of the past year. So it will be a careful, nuanced mix of that. Again, just thinking of everyone's lived experiences, which have been all too real in the past year.
No, I think you're absolutely right. You still, even around Brooklyn, you hear the sirens. They've gone up a pace over the last couple of weeks. And so there's still big infection rates. And that was the big sign last year. There was just non-stop sirens, and it's gone up a pace. So even though the vaccinations are obviously going well, we're not through this yet. So that's a really good point, Mary. So thanks so much for joining us. Congrats on being nominated to the Hall of Fame. And yeah, thanks for joining us on Coffee Break.
Thank you, Steve.